Good evening, I'm Rohit Sharma and welcome to Desi from DC, coming to you every night from heart of Washington. This is where America's power corridor meet India's prime time to break down the political, economic and global stories that shape both nations live from Washington DC. From Capitol Hill to Raisana Hill, we connect the dots between what happens here in Washington and how it echoes back home in India. We begin tonight with the big stories of the day. Bessent predicts Trump and Xi quadruple meetings. Vivek Ramaswamy's fortune skyrockets in 9 months. Trump investment boom falls trillion short. Trump's drone guy drives Ukraine talks. And homegrown Gujarati food sustains Indians overseas. Tonight, a glimmer of hope perhaps. In the long painful saga of Ukraine-Russia conflict, for the first time in a while, talks aimed at peace are making real progress. Now here's what we know. The United States and Ukraine have put forward an updated peace framework, a blueprint if you will, and to end this devastating war. Secret meetings took place recently in Abu Dhabi. Yeah, you heard that right. Behind closed doors, American, Ukrainian, and Russian officials sat down together. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is cautiously optimistic. He reminded the world, and rightly so, that any decision about Ukraine's security must include Ukraine itself. Because when important choices are made behind a country's back, well, they rarely work out.
Now, when it comes to security, there is nothing to divide between us, and there are no separate issues. Everything affects all of us, and everyone needs to be fully informed. We firmly believe security decisions about Ukraine must include Ukraine. That was our position in Geneva. And always security decisions about Europe must include Europe, and the same applies to Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, other countries, and every nation. And this is simply fair, and it actually works, because when something is decided behind the back of the country or its people, there is always a high risk that it simply will not work.
On the other side, Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, warned that if earlier agreements are ignored or rewritten, the whole process could collapse. Now that's a strong caution from one of the most powerful person in Moscow. And then there's US President Donald Trump, who's now part of the conversation, and he today said, we are going to get there. He's eager to meet both President Zelensky and Putin, but only when the deal is truly ready.
And we're working on that final war. It's not easy, but I don't know. I think we're going to get there. 25,000 soldiers, Ukraine, Russia. In the last month, 25,000 soldiers have died. So I think we're getting very close to a deal. We'll find out.
And this is a big but. Just as these talks move forward, violence continues. Ukraine faced missiles and drone strikes even as diplomats tried to find common ground. A stark reminder of how fragile peace really is. So where does this leave us? Progress? For sure, yes. But also many important hurdles still remain. Questions about territory, Ukraine's military capabilities, and future alliances, those questions are still unanswered. The hope that these talks lead to a real lasting peace. The reality, it's complicated, fragile, and will require trust, which is a very, very rare commodity right now. And here's why the world, including New Delhi, is watching these talks closely. No guesses for understanding why India wants peace in Ukraine. India also has strong historic ties with both Russia and Ukraine. The conflict has global economic impacts from energy supplies to food security. And for India, peace in this region, it's just not about geopolitics. It's about stability of millions. And remember those tariffs, the 25% additional tariffs. So as these delicate negotiations continue, New Delhi, like many capitals, hopes for a breakthrough that can possibly bring an end to the suffering before the end of the year. So we'll be watching very closely and keeping you updated every step of the way. For now, that's the latest on this very developing, complex, and unfolding story that poses a curveball every single day. The US military has a big problem. It cannot properly track how much money it's spending in the Pacific, and that too to counter China's growing power. The US Congress has asked Department of Defense or Department of War for clear reports on Pacific spending. But what they're getting back is a complete and, for lack of a better word, a mess. Think of it like asking your family to track household expenses. One person could be in charge of groceries, and another person counts car repairs, someone else adds future vacation plans, and another tracks spending at the neighbor's house. Now try to figure out your actual budget. That's impossible, right? That's exactly what's happening with military spending reports. Different military branches count completely different things. The Air Force, Marines include building maintenance in their reports. The Army and the Navy don't. Some count spending near Hawaii instead near China, where the actual threat is. Others include weapons that won't exist for another 10 years, instead of focusing on what they have right now. Meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, there's some positive news. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says President Donald Trump and Xi Jinping may meet up to 4 times next year as both countries work to maintain a fragile trade truce. Yeah, that's 4 times. Bessent, speaking with CNBC, said, "What I feel very good about is that relationship between the leaders. We're always going to be rivals. That's natural. But are there things we can do together? Yes." Now, Trump may attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation meeting in Shenzhen, China, next year. In addition to his anticipated visit to Beijing in April, Xi is also expected to visit the US twice, once in Washington for an official state visit, and once at Trump's resort for a G20 summit. Bessent believes 4 meetings would give relationship great stability, which is good for American people and for the world economy. The Treasury chief has been leading multiple rounds of trade talks with Beijing in cities around the world. His comments come after Trump and Xi spoke on Monday, their first conversation since they met last October in South Korea. Indian-American political leader Vivek Ramaswamy, who is running to be the next governor of Ohio, has seen his wealth nearly double. Yes, that's double in just 9 months, reaching an estimated $1.8 billion US. That's an 80% jump since March, making him one of the richest person in America. You might think this wealth explosion comes from his rising political career. After all, he ran for president in 2024 before backing Donald Trump and is now campaigning for himself in Ohio to be the next governor. But that's not the real story. The real reason behind Ramaswamy's billionaire status is his old pharmaceutical company, Roivant Sciences. The 39-year-old launched Roivant Sciences back in 2014, the same year he made Forbes' 30 Under 30 list, a prestigious list. He became the chairman of the company in 2021, and the company actually went public soon after. In early 2023, he left the board to focus on his presidential run, but he kept tens of millions of shares in the company. Those shares are now worth a fortune. Bloomberg reports that in April, the company raised about $75 million in a Series D funding at about $1.5 billion of evaluation. Ramaswamy's stake is estimated at around 100 million, representing 6.7% of the company. A spokesperson from his team confirmed the Forbes fortune, or the numbers, as broadly correct. Back in March, Forbes estimated his net worth at about just $1 billion US, barely making him into the billionaires list. 9 months later, he's sitting at $1.8 billion, proving that in Ramaswamy's case, it's pharma that's making him rich and not politics. When Russia and Ukraine peace talks took an unexpected turn last week, President Trump sent an unlikely figure to handle critical negotiation. 39-year-old Dan Driscoll, the youngest ever Army Secretary, known as Trump's drone guy. He has no background in international diplomacy and has never held a public office before. The key to understanding Driscoll and his relationship is to understand how close he is with Vice President J.D. Vance. Both attended public universities, served in the Army, earned Yale law degrees, and worked in finance. They met at a veterans group in law school and became close friends. In summer of 2024, Driscoll was vacationing in Switzerland when Vance called. He was Trump's running mate back then and wanted Driscoll on the campaign. The next day, Driscoll flew home, bought a suit at an outlet mall, took an Uber to the Republican National Convention, and joined Trump's inner circle. Now, once he's confirmed as the Army Secretary, Driscoll's influence has grown rapidly. He's led National Guard deployments to the US cities, became acting director of the ATF. Though he praised Ukraine drone technology, he was initially involved in peace talks until a controversial 28-point US-Russia peace plan leaked last week. Driscoll then made an unannounced visit to Ukraine with top Pentagon officials, met President Zelensky, and joined talks in Geneva with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Ambassador Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner to refine the peace framework. He also held talks with Russian officials in Abu Dhabi. Now, Trump has tasked Witkoff to meet Putin in Moscow, while Driscoll will handle all the Ukrainian communication. Driscoll is set to fly back to Kyiv tonight to continue these important discussions. And Washington insiders wonder, could he replace, possibly in future, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth or become the official Ukraine envoy? Driscoll envisions a future army where every soldier carries drones and relies on AI. We will win with silicon and software, not our soldiers' blood and bodies, he says. Former First Lady Michelle Obama is in the news, and she's in the news because of a latest photoshoot that has sparked an internet firestorm, but not for the reasons you would expect. The former First Lady appeared in a behind-the-scenes session by photographer Annie Leibovitz, looking noticeably slimmer in jeans and gray t-shirt. Instead of celebrating the project about women, social media, as it often does, erupted with wild speculation. And the speculation was about Ozempic use. Now, there is zero evidence that she's using the diabetes drug turned weight loss sensation, and Obama has openly discussed menopause-related body changes. Yet nuance does not survive online outrage. Let's look at this report where we will break this down for you.
Michelle Obama's latest photo shoot was meant to celebrate women. Instead, it ignited the internet. The former First Lady appeared noticeably slimmer in a behind-the-scenes shoot captured by legendary photographer Annie Leibovitz. And instantly, social media went into meltdown mode. Instagram clips show Michelle in a simple grey t-shirt, jeans, and suit boots, radiating ease and confidence. By the comment sections, a raging storm of speculation. Suddenly, nobody was talking about her Project Woman. They were talking about Ozempic. Online commentators quickly spiraled into theories suggesting everything from secret weight loss shortcuts to the idea that medication today is simply more convenient than traditional fitness routines. Others insisted that celebrities have easier access to drugs like Ozempic, while some predicted harsh consequences for long-term use. And just like that, Michelle Obama, a long-time advocate of fitness and healthy living, found herself at the center of a controversy she never invited. There is no evidence she uses Ozempic, yet this speculation drowned out everything else. Much of the noise also ignores something Obama has openly discussed: menopause. In a candid 2022 interview with People, she described the slow creep of weight changes in her 60s, a frank acknowledgement of how hormonal shifts shape the body, even for women who stay active. But nuance rarely survives on social media, especially when Ozempic hysteria enters the chat. And that hysteria is real. Ozempic, a drug designed for type 2 diabetes, has become a viral phenomenon thanks to its active ingredient, semaglutide. a compound that reduces appetite and aids weight loss. It's medically regulated, but online it's treated like a magic wand. As celebrities slim down, whether through training, aging, illness, or lifestyle changes, the internet slaps the same label on them: Ozempic. Michelle Obama is simply the latest target of this cultural fixation. A photo shoot meant to highlight women's stories has instead highlighted something else: a digital world obsessed with policing bodies, demanding explanations, and turning speculation into headlines. With Rishika Aradhya, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
Let's talk about Indian Americans and how their lives in India are always helped by those back home. And this time, it's about a very special person. Now, many of you must have, before boarding flights to America, you do get stuff from India. But this one is really special because some travelers now are making a special stop in Mumbai and Ahmedabad, not for last-minute shopping, but to pick up vacuum-sealed packets of thepla, fafda, khakra, and other Gujarati snacks. These home-cooked foods are prepared by Gujarati women running small businesses from their kitchens, and they have become lifelines for students and techies who head to the US and abroad. Meet Milan Vakharia, a techie based in New Jersey. When he flies out of Mumbai, 7 to 8 kgs of his 30-kilogram checked bag is packed with Gujarati farsan and snacks. There's no shortage of Gujarati snacks in the US. Multiple brands, obviously, as you guys will know, ship in America, and supermarkets like Patel stores stock them. But they can't match the taste of homemade snacks prepared by Gujarati bands back home, Vakharia says. Vakharia has been carrying food to the US since 2017 when he moved to New York as a student at NYU. Those packets sustained him for first 2 weeks in America while he figured out meal plans on a very tight budget. The food I got from India was cheap and I was sure about its pure vegetarian seal, he tells India Today. Vakharia gets his food from Darshana Makwana, who runs home kitchen business out of Andheri East in Mumbai. She is packing food for overseas travelers for nearly 27 years, catering to students, techies, NRIs, and even celebrities. These Gujarati women-run ventures have been around for around decades, essentially, but with more Indians heading to the US, Canada, and UK for studies and jobs, and as such, these businesses have mushroomed across Mumbai's Gujarati neighborhoods like Vile Parle, Ghatkopar, Borivali, Kandivali, and throughout Gujarat. Some have even become international brands like Induben Khakrawala, which started in Ahmedabad in 1965, and Lijjat, begun by 7 Gujarati women on a terrace in south of Mumbai. Carrying home-cooked food has long been a tradition among communities like Gujaratis and Marwadis, who were traditionally merchants. Times have changed, but this habit has not. Today, the travel boom is driven by a thriving NRI community and a steady stream of students and techies chasing the American dream. And feeding them silently from across the ocean are the Gujarati bains, making food on order from their small kitchens back home. The White House is touting a massive number, $9.6 trillion in new investment commitments since President Trump took office. $9.6 trillion since January of this year. And it sounds like an economic game changer. But when Bloomberg's economists dug into the details, they found a different story. Stripped off of gas purchase agreements, trade pledges, and vague future promises, the realistic investment figure drops to about $7 trillion, which is still huge. $7 trillion is still huge. But it's concentrated in AI, data centers, and semiconductors that were already expanding. Official data shows private investment holding steady, not surging. And here's a report on that.
In Washington, the White House has been telling a big story, one of a country on the brink of an investment renaissance. On its website, the administration points to a number, $9.6 trillion, a figure so large it almost invites you to pause. According to officials, that's the total value of new commitments from corporations, investors, and foreign governments. since President Trump returned to office. But when independent economists at Bloomberg sat down with the same list, their story unfolded a little differently. They found that woven into the sweeping total were items that don't quite fit the traditional idea of investment. Some were future gas purchase agreements, others broad trade understandings or long-term economic cooperation pledges, all important signals, but not the kind of concrete spending that builds factories or breaks ground on new projects. After carefully separating those pieces, Bloomberg estimates that about $7 trillion represents realistic investment promises. It's still a huge number, but one that comes with context. Much of it is concentrated in the sectors driving America's technological race: AI infrastructure, data centers, and semiconductors. Industries that were already expanding long before this administration actually took office. And then there are the sovereign pledges, commitments from foreign governments, impressive on paper, but often vague, spread over many years, and dependent on future negotiations. Economists caution that these numbers can shift, stall, or shrink once the deal takes shape. For now, official government data shows private sector investment in the broader economy holding roughly steady. The surge many expected hasn't yet appeared in construction sites, hiring numbers, or factory output. The White House says the announcement are signs of global confidence, a belief that America is once again the place to build. Analysts say the real test will come over time, when these promises either turn into steel, concrete, and jobs, or remain ambitious headlines.
It is Thanksgiving week in America, and as you would expect, two turkeys headed from the posh Willard Hotel across from the White House today and became the latest to receive a presidential pardon in a tradition that officially dates back to President H.W. Bush. But the history of White House Thanksgiving tradition stretches back more than 160 years to President Abraham Lincoln, who established it as a national holiday. Now, during the Civil War on October 3, 1863, Lincoln issued the Thanksgiving Proclamation after writer Sarah Josepha Hale spent decades campaigning for a national holiday. She had written essays calling for Thanksgiving since 1827 and finally wrote directly to President Lincoln in September 1863, asking him to use his presidential pass. Lincoln obliged, and the country has celebrated Thanksgiving ever since. It wasn't until Congress passed a bill on December 26, 1941, that the holiday was fixed on the fourth Thursday in November. The tradition of pardoning turkeys has an interesting history. The first turkey pardon is believed to have been issued by Lincoln himself in 1863, when he granted clemency to a turkey named Jack that belonged to his son Tad. The bird had been slated for the family's Christmas dinner but was spared. However, the annual practice of sending pardoned turkeys to farms did not become official until Reagan's presidency in 1980s, and before that, presidents occasionally received turkeys from poultry industries and decided not to eat them, but without formal pardons as we see on televisions today. By 1989, President George H.W. Bush made it an annual tradition, coining the line still used today. He's granted a presidential pardon as of right now. On Tuesday, President Trump pardoned two turkeys named Gobble and Waddle, with Waddle serving as backup. Trump issued Gobble a complete and unconditional pardon, telling the turkey, "God bless you." Beyond the turkey spectacle, presidents celebrate Thanksgiving much like American families. The first documented White House Thanksgiving was on November 28, 1878, when President Rutherford Hayes held a large dinner with family and staff, singing hymns afterwards. In recent decades, presidents have traveled to their favorite vacation spots for a holiday, like most Americans do. Now, Reagan went to his California ranch in 1985. President Trump, following that tradition, is heading to his favorite spot, which is Mar-a-Lago, as he did nearly every Thanksgiving in his first term. Former President Biden, he would travel to Nantucket over the weekend, continuing a Biden family tradition spanning over 40 years.
The turkeys being pardoned today go by the names of Gobble and Waddle. When I first saw their pictures, I thought we should send them well, I shouldn't say this. I was gonna call them Chuck and Nancy. But then I realized I wouldn't be pardoning them. I would never pardon those two people. I wouldn't pardon them. I wouldn't care what Melania told me. Darling, I think it would be a nice thing to do. I won't do it, darling.
Places I've ever seen where people describe its mass and like how it's made. It was carved out of a mountain. The whole temple was entirely carved out of a mountain. It wasn't built. They removed the mountain and created this insane, like very symmetrical, incredibly intricate temple. It doesn't show any chisel marks on it. It's like hundreds of millions of tons of rocks have been removed. That thing. Bro, have you ever seen that?
No, I have not
Dude, I
seen
watched
that.
a whole YouTube documentary on it last night.
And that wraps up tonight's edition of Desi from DC. This is Rohit Sharma for India Today and India Today Global. And if you're watching this on India Today Global, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button before you leave. And as I always say, stay tuned, stay informed, and always stay curious. Thank you for watching.